Let's play two truths and a lie. I'll go since I have the microphone. My first statement is, I've never broken a bone. My second statement is, I represented Team USA in an international competition. And my third statement is, I'm terrified of public speaking. My name's Jamie Sims, and those used to be my go-to statements when playing two truths and a lie. So now that I've shared, it's your guys' turn to vote. Who thinks my lie is, I've never broken a bone? I can't see hands, so if you could make a noise, that'd be helpful. Oh, hands, I can see, I have lights now. All right, so a few people. How many think that the lie is I represented Team USA? All right, I see some hands, but we have light now. And the third one, how many think that the lie is that I'm terrified of public speaking? Oh, spoiler. Back in the 6th grade, I had a nasty run-in with a dusty gym floor, and 2 of my fingers did not escape unbroken. So the lie is, I've never broken a bone. And let's go ahead and get the other thing out of the way. I did represent Team USA in an engineering competition in France, and it's as nerdy as it sounds, guys. My team came in 3rd place after France and also another country that speaks a lot of French, Canada, so it may have been rigged. But today, I want to share with you guys a little bit about my fear of public speaking and how I'm learning not to waste my platforms. See, my fear of public speaking is really rooted in this fear of failure, and I think others can relate to that. I want to be perfect when I communicate, and sometimes those nerves, they manifest in different ways. Like sometimes I'll talk really, really, really fast, and then I get out of breath, and then I'm trying to catch my breath while I'm still telling you guys what's going on. Another way that looks is, I was at my best friend's wedding, and I was giving a toast, and I was so excited because it was so important. And so as I stood there with my cup and my paper in hand, I began to violently shake, so much so I couldn't read the paper. And I had this thought, well, there goes my shot at perfection. I'm not going to kill this. So I took a deep breath, I looked out into the audience, and I just acknowledged that they made me nervous. And after that, the pressure was off because I'd already failed, but I could go on and give that speech. And that became a coping mechanism for me. And so, about 3 years ago, I had an opportunity to get up in front of 300 young adults, whom I didn't know most of them, and share a bit of my story about how I was learning to patiently and actively and sometimes painfully wait on the Lord. And after I got done pouring out my heart, I felt extreme relief. I think I would equate it to the equivalent of like a speaker's, runner's high. And in that moment, I heard God say, I'm going to use your voice. Now, I've already told you about my fear of public speaking, so you could imagine I began to freak. I was like, why would you ever want to do that? What do I have to offer? I had no idea what God was doing, but I did know I wanted to be obedient. And I knew one other thing. I wasn't going to look for opportunities. God would have to do all of the work. In fact, about a week later, I'm walking into a meeting, and there are 2 guys sitting on a couch, and they're guys that make decisions around here. And one of them just points at me and says, Jamie, would you go on stage and do announcements? Now, as soon as he asked, I really think he began to regret that. Because instead of giving him a yes or no answer, I paused. I looked up to the left like I do when I think. And I had this internal debate. Ugh, definitely not. I'm not interested. And then I reminded myself, oh, I just told God that he could use my voice. But I think I was thinking it would be like 6 months from then and not a week later, kind of a later rather than sooner kind of a thing. And then I crafted this genius response. I would want to tell you yes, ? Yeah, it was really good. But it was really honest. Because while I had said yes to getting up and speaking and using platforms, I didn't have that desire in my heart yet. And so I went on to do announcements that first week, and it was terrible. I basically got up, was very, very prim and proper, stood at attention, was like a robot, recited all my facts about all the things going around, and then walked off stage, and I bombed, guys. It was really bad. But I got more and more reps. And what I realized in that, and I began to see, was my voice mattered. And that was my first lesson of not wasting my platform. See, it's not about talking at a bunch of people, it's about talking with them. And so I learned to leverage my experiences and the experiences of my friends to encourage people to join in different things going on around here. And a few months later, another friend of mine asked me to go with him to Columbus to help figure out how a community would go from being in our anywhere space, meeting in homes and classrooms, to becoming a site, kind of like Crossroads Eastside. And he was gonna go lead on this platform, and I, very much from the background, was gonna support and help run logistics and figure out how things would work. And we were about a week into that endeavor when my friend came to me and said, "Hey, I can't do this. I'm out." And all of a sudden, I found myself thrust on this huge platform of influence where I was leading a community, and I didn't feel prepared for this. And I didn't feel worthy to take on this responsibility. But I did know one thing. I told God he could use my voice, and this was a platform. So I had my perspective going into this, and I knew it had to change because I was leading a new community. And that's how I learned my second lesson in not wasting my platform. The voice and the perspective of your audience matters. So I had to get to know my people because I was leading them and casting vision and making decisions on what we were going to do. But I was also advocating for them when I was in the community pastors' meetings, when we were making decisions about what we were going to do as sites. And this continued. I did that for a while. And then I started having this unsettledness. It felt like I wasn't where I was supposed to be. And that was hard to acknowledge because people were depending on me. And this was a platform, after all, that God had given me, and I wanted to use it and use it well. But then I realized it was no longer my platform to lead on. So I did something that's not typical in the professional world. I voluntarily took a step back and stepped down as the community pastor in Columbus. And in that moment, realizing that I had surrendered one of the largest and biggest platforms of influence around Crossroads, I found myself asking God, "Are you still going to use my voice?" Guys, his answer was so sweet. It was yes. In fact, ironically, after surrendering one of the largest platforms, I found so many platforms that my voice is being heard on. Not only more platforms, but even with more effectiveness. My voice is so much more powerful now. Because when I'm talking about platforms, I don't just mean standing on this stage or leading a community up in Columbus. I mean any space where you have the opportunity to share your experience and speak out for the betterment of the people you have influence over, or even to advocate for people whose voices who can't be heard. Now, for me, some of those platforms look like my family. I have 2 beautiful nieces, and I love being able to build into them and encourage them, and sometimes correct them, that happens, but because I believe that they're gonna go so much further than I will. Another platform is the team that I lead around here on the east side, our experience team as the producer. And it's a great team. I lead the people on my team. Sometimes I also have to correct them, but I get to challenge them and push them to do more. Yes, I'm also responsible for keeping Greg in line and on time, and I apologize. I don't always do that well. I got claps for that. Another platform, this one's a little more tricky, is my Facebook account. Yeah, I want to write about social injustices I see. I want to comment on perceived political wrongs, but I don't, because I know that my comments are going to show up in someone else's feed, and I don't want to alienate anyone. I talked about being able to advocate for people whose voices can't be heard. So I use my seat around the producer table. We have a producer from every single one of our sites that meets, but Columbus is in this nebulous zone, and they don't have a producer. So I remember the people up there and what their struggles are, and I advocate for them in every room I'm in. But also, sometimes in that same room, I hear things that bother me. And I wonder, am I being too sensitive, or do I need to speak up? Because the reality is I don't want to get labeled an angry black woman. And that's a stereotype where Black women can be overly aggressive or very angry or super, super threatening. And that is a lens through which I consider all of my decisions because I don't want that to be attached to me. And sometimes I just don't want to speak up because I don't want to represent all Black people, or I don't want to represent all women, or I don't want to represent all single people. Can't someone else have an opinion on this? Why are we having this same conversation? I'm not even the only single Black female on staff. Can't one of them speak up? And then I remember that it's all of my experiences that shape my perspective, that inform my voice, so my voice matters. Now you may be thinking, hey Jamie, I'm in the majority, so do I really need to speak up? And I would encourage you, yes. You see, the things that have challenged me and really challenged my assumptions and changed my perspective is hearing from people who don't look like me. Or maybe you're thinking, well, I don't have a platform like this to talk to hundreds of people. This is not the only platform. Maybe you're a high school student or a college student and you study at a table with the same kids every week. That's a platform. Maybe you're a stay-at-home mom who takes the kids to the park and you sit with other moms on that park bench. That's a platform. Maybe you're a single dude and you hang out at your dudes group and you guys sit around a fire pit and you encourage each other and you speak truth to one another. That's a platform. Maybe it's a boardroom or a volunteer team. It's anywhere your voice is being heard, because whether you realize it or not, it's being heard. And people are informing what they know based on what you're saying. And so I'm not the first woman that God has used. There's a lady in the Bible called Esther, and she had such a crazy story. You see, she was exiled in Persia, and she had all these different experiences, like being an orphan and being brought into the harem of the king. And her cousin, who was kind of her keeper, he told her to keep her heritage and her family connections secret. Because as she was being made the queen of Persia, there was this guy who was very focused on ending all the Jews in Persia. And as that day of destruction drew near, Esther's cousin got to her and said, hey, you got to speak up, because you're a Jew also. What do you think's going to happen? And he goes on to say in Esther 4, chapter 4, verse 14, for if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this? So I don't know exactly what your platform is. Maybe it's that park bench. Maybe it's the fire pit. Maybe it's the boardroom. But who knows if you've gotten to that point for such a time as this? To speak up against injustices that you see, to encourage one another, to challenge one another, to push one another to go further. See, I believe if we were to all use our platforms responsibly, then there would be less bullying in the world, less isolation, and definitely less regret. And maybe there would be more kindness and community and a sense of belonging. So now you have a choice. You have to choose whether or not you're going to use your platform, that study table, that park bench, that volunteer team. You have to choose whether you're going to use it responsibly or let it go to waste. Thank you.